I get looked at weird for saying I prefer Zack Snyder movie trailers over his actual films, but they're just so well made. Seriously, I used to get excited for the next thing he'd make more to get a nice looking trailer to fawn over than for the film itself. His movies had a look to them, and safe to assume that the look was what got people in the seats rather than the material itself. Prove me wrong. Good music, good editing, not to mention the fact that his movies make for great condensed, high-octane montages, but everything changed when he partnered with Netflix and decided to be his own DP. Why, I genuinely ask, as a fan of his, what's he trying to prove, and to whom? What's keeping Larry Fong so busy that he can't reconnect with who I think he's made his best work with? Rebel Moon is a movie I should totally be on the lookout for, basically being a talented filmmaker's chance to do a Star Wars, and when I say a Star Wars, I mean an original sci-fi epic with a chosen aesthetic with which the filmmaker can just go crazy with, hopefully with a good story and characters to give it its needed legs. You've got Kosinski's Oblivion, the Wachowski sisters' Jupiter Ascending, Gareth Edwards' The Creator, James Cameron's Avatar, those types. Just a fun pretext to have a feature-length exercise in unbridled sci-fi filmmaking. It's hype. Though, small issue, when they say Snyder's making Star Wars at home, he's literally making Star Wars at home, home being Netflix. That's a red flag. I feel nothing watching those two trailers, which may or may not be a hot take, depending on where you dump it. From what I'm getting, saying this would get me an upvote on Film Reddit and a witch burning on Twitter. Two reasons why I should be excited. Let's talk about the space opera part first. Hard not to expect some crazy space weirdness for literally being out there in concept. Call me shallow, but I like space operas because they're so pretty, but often at a cost. Hard to create other worlds on a thriller budget. I especially like when they carry a well-defined aesthetic, often accomplished through fancy costumes and monumental production design. Star Wars is retrofuturist, Jupiter Ascending is gothic with some nuggets of steampunk, Dune, as accurately described by Oscar, is a brutalist nightmare. Those movies where their aesthetics loudly enough to stand out on their own, and to better be defined by us, the visitors, if you will, which I have a hard time doing looking at what I'm seeing so far. Wait, that's Ray Fisher? Okay, fine, that's a win. I like Donna Bay's outfit, but I also kinda like Donna Bay. I like her fun hat. Alright, aside of the space barbarian stuff I see which seems neat but doesn't stand out as much as I'd wish, or the medieval armory I'm seeing here and there, or Donna, it looks like the film thrift shopped its way through the wardrobe. What was the budget on this? Oh, alright. Normally, when well done, the appeal of high-concept sci-fi has to do with some expensive aspects unless the script is out of this world, pun intended. When people talk about Firefly, it's less about gushing over the obvious space western aesthetic and all about the Whedon script, but I'd be hydraulic pressed if this were the case for a Snyder-written film. Being wrong could be fun. I'll reserve my narrative judgment for the final product, but as to the visuals, I think what you see is what you get. Though you know you've got a problem when your average Redditor expresses that it looks like a B-movie but unsure about whether it was intentional or not. 300 being what it was could have been that, but it wasn't because it was better shot, which leads me to red flag number 2, shot by Snyder. The film doesn't even look that cheap, actually pretty good for an 83 million. I just wouldn't have minded some of the more derivative visual concepts or the large grey wall aesthetic if it were for Larry Fong doing his thing, but I'm just not a fan of whatever game Snyder's playing with that lens. Contrary to his earlier work, things don't have that rough tangibility, there's no texture to the actor's skin, and they sometimes look like they're melting into the background. Intentional or not, I'm not into it. Everything looks fuzzy, and I can tell this goes beyond the YouTube compression. Why do the space scenes look like they were shot in an unwashed aquarium? Why does this asteroid belt look so unserious? I can't even say that 2003 wants its CGI back because Lord of the Rings exists. Side note, I think every space shot in every sci-fi film in the world should be handled by J.J. Abrams. I don't even care if it's like 2 shots, just let him do it. Here, everything looks like it's been dipped in Vaseline, fizzing out all the texture or sharpness I'd be familiar with from Snyder's pre-Justice League work. I miss the practical texture of Watchmen, allowing Larry Fong to utilize reflections for amazing results. Sucker Punch felt more real than whatever Snyder's shot with Netflix, despite mostly taking place in the imagination of a pubescent teen who just discovered anime. As augmented as those sets feel, they feel real. Love me some deep focus once in a while. Take away all the dreamscape spectacle and you still have shots that put anything post-Justice League to shame. 300, despite being 50% green screen and 50% men, could cut a boulder in half just with its looks. You know what those movies have in common? Larry Fong. Also not shot by Netflix. Look at that shot. Look at how sharp the silhouette is. Look at how well Cavill's handsome face is separated from the background. Look at that texture on Batman's cowl, the color grade. Can you tell the difference at this point? Do you see what I'm talking about? Am I going crazy? I could really use some feedback because nowadays I don't even trust my own perspective. Also, considering his film's brutal energy, I enjoy the irony of describing his action as elegant and oddly romantic. When talking about 300, Big Joel refers to the sensuality of violence, and I think that's right on the money. The action seemed driven by a much more specific mindset, but here, it instead feels like they just shot everything with that abysmal frame rate so that they could just slow down whatever segment they wanted instead of constructing a shot strictly for it to look good in bullet time, if you will. Can you tell that I miss the Wachowski sisters? So, those are most of my gripes, but I'll stop myself there. You don't need to practice a profession to critique the works of those who actually do. That would be unfair. You don't need to be a video game designer to earn the right to say that Sonic 06 is kind of a broken piece of work, and that's just being nice. I swear I'm not trying to bash Snyder when I say that I prefer him strictly as a director and being more collaborative instead of doing a Tommy frickin' Wiseau. I'd be apprehensive too if the news came that Villeneuve planned to shoot Messiah by himself. I quit hanging on to that auteur theory when I realized that some of the big guys out there known as such just work with the same people. Sometimes they marry them. It's the team coming back to do something resembling what you enjoyed those other times. Zack Snyder is a smart and competent director, so despite the inherent constraints, being Netflix and his own damn self, I just can't help but assume that those are some overt decisions, ones I just disagree with. At least I'm fair enough to compare him to his earlier works instead of the works of other filmmakers, so he can't hit me with the, well, that's just his style. His films can look better than that. Just go watch 300 again, then we'll talk. Green screen is this movie's backbone, and yet he made it work. Hell, that's an understatement, so I don't want to hear that I'm a hater. Snyder's name attached to a project would normally spark my interest, but I'm just having a hard time finding what initially appealed to me from his best works and those images in my opinion. I just don't get the jitters looking at this. The same jitters I still get watching those Sucker Punch and Watchmen trailers. I've got a theory. I think those are the movies that best represent what most people like about Snyder. He doesn't pull back in those, and yet having Snyder's name on other projects is enough for his fans to project those attributes onto those films despite their distinctiveness, preferred or not. I actually did that with Man of Steel, and it took me a while to realize why BVS looked more like a Snyder film to me out of the two. Larry Fong's return as a cinematographer. Some directors' style are more reliant on collaboration than in others, but I can safely say that I'd only be looking forward to the next Snyder thing as long as he works with Larry. We should encourage ourselves to criticize the things we're invested in so that they can improve, so that we don't have to lie to ourselves about our relationship with the art we engage with, hiding our perpetual dissatisfaction. I might be projecting. Like I said, I genuinely don't hate the guy. About a week ago, he made this video of him breaking down the trailer for his movie, and it's probably the most charming thing I've seen in a while. I mean, is there anything more endearing than a man passionately talking about what he does with a healthy amount of pride from his accomplishments, and he's still got that glimmer in his eyes? You know what? Forget everything I said. It looks fine. This is fine. What was I saying again? Something about him being a better director than a cinematographer? Sure, I don't think it's that blasphemous a statement. I don't think the Snide Hive will come for me for this. I'll be fine. This is fine. I just think he makes better looking movies when he works with Larry. Hopefully next time's the time. Oh Christ, he's making Dune at home.